Hello students, welcome back. Hope you all are good. So in our previous class as well as during our live online class, we learned about the Mendel's law, and also in the previous video you guys learned what are genes, what are alleles, what is the difference between gene and allele, right? So this we have learned in our previous video. In this video we are going to learn about the ABO blood groups types. So, as we all know that we are learning the chapter 4 principle of inheritance and variation. So, let's get started. So, you all know what are genes and where are they located. All these things we have already discussed. So, and also what is the difference between gene and allele. So just to recall that every home chromosomes, like in a chromosomes, you inherit one gene from the mother and one gene from the father, and that will be in a specific location that we call that as locus. And also the slightly variant or the different version of the same gene is what we call alleles, right? So this you already learned and you already know, so we have already seen that. So in our live class itself, we learned about multiple allelism. So to recall, just let me briefly explain you about what is multiple allelism. As I told you, in a chromosomes, we'll have two genes. One from the father, one from the mother. The same gene will contain different version of the gene is what we call alleles, right? So in a given individual, if you take any individual organisms in the chromosome, they will contain only two copies of alleles, one from the mother and one from the father. But in the population, say for example, in human population, we have for blood types we have more than two alleles that code for the blood group. So the example which I gave you is ABO, right? Remember? So this type of process or this type of genetic is what we call multiple allelism. So how can we study and how to know that our humans or child inherit blood types from the mother? So we can know that by studying the antigens and antibodies present on the blood cells. And just for rough example, I have given this picture. If you look at the picture, this is the antigen and this is the antibody. So for different blood groups, antigens and antibodies varies, that we will be seeing it shortly. So what are the four major common blood groups that we have? We have A, B, O, AB. So we have A, B and O, AB. These are the common type of blood groups that are available, that are present in human population, right? So let's see about how these blood groups are being inherited from the parents to the child and what are responsible for such mechanism. So how do we know which person has which particular blood group type? We learn that we come to know that by the presence of antigens on the surface of the red blood cells. So let me start with the type A blood group. So in the type A blood group, in the red blood cells on the surface they will have type A antigen. In their plasma they will have antibody B. So type A blood group will have antibody B. So which means this antibody can only recognize type A antigen. Likewise, in B blood group, in the red blood cells, on the surface of the red blood cells, we have antigen B and their antibody in the plasma is antibody A. So these antibody A can only recognize antigen B. So in type AB blood group, we have both A antigen as well as B antigens. And this is the reason why they are universal recipient. And also they don't have either A or B antibody. So that this a person with AB blood group can get blood from both type A and B and O since they don't have any particular antibody. And also we have type O blood group. On the surface of the type O blood group, they will not contain either A antigen or B antigen, but still they will contain another antigen called H antigen, which is also a precursor of both type A and B antigen. I will explain you that later. And in their plasma they will contain both antibody A and B. So what happens when you get a blood from other person who is not of your blood type? So this is what happens: agglutination. So what is agglutination? Agglutination is the clumping of particles. So as I told you, in the blood we have plasma. In the plasma um, um, we have antibodies, right? So I told you type A blood group, on the surface they have A antigen. In their plasma they will have antibody B. So these antibodies B can only recognize antigen A. So if you get anything apart from A antigen, what happened? It will start attacking them. So likewise in type B blood group, these A antibodies can only recognize B antigen. So the person with A blood group cannot give blood to a person with B blood group, right? So what is agglutination again? As I told you, these antibodies have can only recognize the same antigen which is there in their body. So say for example in the type A blood group we have antibodies B that can recognize only antigen A. So then if we get blood from type B person, what happens? It starts attacking them and agglutination takes place. The clumping of particles takes place in the blood. So the reason why a person with O blood group can give blood to everybody, because on the surface of the red blood cells they will not contain both A or B antigen, so that they won't attack the blood group with the person who has this type O blood group. Likewise, if you take type A and type AB blood group, they since they have both type A antigen and B antigen, they can receive blood from anybody else. So this is one advantage for the people who have this type AB blood group, but it is the rarest blood group in the world. And one more important thing, type O blood group people can only get blood from the O blood group, but they can give blood to everybody else. The reason why they cannot get blood from everyone else, because their antibodies have both A and B antibodies. So if you get blood from a person with A blood group, what happens? The B antibody can recognize antigen A, but the A antibody cannot recognize antigen A, so it will start attacking. So that is why the universal donor can only get blood from the type O blood group people. This AB blood group can get blood from everyone else. So this beautiful information, this beautiful ABO blood group pattern was first discovered and identified by Carl Landsteiner. So as I and this AB blood group, the universal recipient, was later studied and also discovered by one of his student, Von D. Castillo and Sturley. So these multiple allelic. So as I told you, in a chromosome we will have only two alleles, right? One from the father and mother. So in human population we have three alleles that are responsible for these ABO blood groups, right? So those allelic form has been discovered by the Bernstein in 1925, and also he studied about their multiple allelic form and identified they are located in the chromosome number 9. And the gene that controls this a type A B O blood group, right? So the gene that encodes for these blood groups are called L or I. The name L has come after the person who has discovered this ABO blood group. So that is why gene that controls this ABO blood group is called either L or I. So I means isoagglutination. So agglutination means, you guys know what is agglutination. It means clumping of particles. So iso means same. Since we humans are same species, but still we are not able to get blood from any humans. I mean, we will have to get blood from our same type of blood group people, apart from the this universal donor, right? So that is why it is called isoagglutination. So even though we are same species, but we are unable to get blood from every individual, so we'll have to specifically look for the person who has the same blood type, or else the universal donor blood type. So we know the gene that controls this ABO blood group is I. So this I gene will have three allelic forms, which is IA, IB, and IO. So these three alleles are present in our human population. Now we are going to learn how these three alleles, which is present in our human population, codes for the different ABO blood group types. So don't get confused here. I means a gene that are responsible for the ABO blood group, and ABO are the same gene, a different version of the same gene. In simple, we call that as allele. Since we have more than one or two alleles, we call this as multiple allelism. So I just want you guys to remember. Now this allele A and B, which in short we can also call that IA or IB, produce transferase enzymes, whereas this allele IO does not produce any enzymes. So recall, in my previous slide I told you that all the blood groups, A blood group, B, and as well as AB and O, on the surface they will have either A antigen. If you take A blood group, on the surface of the red blood cell we have A antigen, right? Likewise, B blood group people will have B antigen, whereas AB blood group people will have both A as well as B antigen. But I told you the O blood group people will not have any A or B antigen, but still they will contain another antigen which is known as H antigen. And I also told you this H antigen is also called as precursor of A as well as B antigen. What do you mean by precursor? Before the formation of the blood group A and B, this H antigen will be present. Okay, so let's see how it is done. So if we take a red blood cell, on the surface of the red blood cell we'll have different molecules. Say for example, glucose, galactose, N-acetylglucosamine, galactose. So all these things will be there on the surface of the red blood cell. So in the people with O blood group, especially this IO allele, right? So it will uh, go and change go and attach these fucose sugar on the surface of the red blood cells. So along with all these sugars, all these molecule including the fucose, we call this as H antigen. So the blood group A as well as B will contain this H antigen, which means before the formation of blood group A and B, the red blood cells will have all these molecules on the surface. So that is why H antigen is known as precursor of blood group A, antigen A and B. So what happens in the case of A blood group? So the A blood group, what happens? This transferase enzyme will be produced by the allele IA. So the transferase enzyme here is N-acetyl galactose transferase. So that goes as well as add and this N-acetyl galactose transferase enzyme change and catalyze and finally change into N-acetyl galactosamine. So in short, we can call this as NAG. So if the red blood cells on the surface, if they have this N-acetyl galactosamine, then we can call this as antigen A. So will name that as A blood group. So look at here in the picture, as I told you. So why you can also see all the molecules are already present. this H antigen is already there in the A blood group as well as in the B blood group. So this H antigen, why it is known as precursor? Before the formation of the A antigen, which means before the formation of the A blood group, this H antigen is already there. That is why it is called the precursor of antigen A and antigen B. So see here, this transferase enzyme produced by this allele IA that goes and binds on top of that surface molecules, and if we have this NAG on the surface of the red blood cell, we call that as A antigen. Likewise, similarly in B blood group, this IB allele produce galactase transferase enzyme. This enzyme goes and add up with the surface molecule of the red blood cell or H antigen, and this blood group, if a blood group has galactose, additional galactose on the surface, then we can call that as antigen B. So now you understand how what is antigen A and B. So before the formation of the antigen A and B, we already have this H antigen, because this H antigen is already present in both A and B and O blood group. So since these additional molecules are not on the surface of the O blood group, we call that as without an antigen. People usually call that, but they actually have this H antigen. So since like this A or B blood group, this IO allele does not produce any terminal transferase enzyme. So what does terminal transferase enzyme? I mean, so we have the same molecules already there, right? So these molecules, if you take A blood group, this IA allele, it produces transferase enzyme at the end, and finally we get antigen A. Likewise, if you take B blood group, in the B blood group, what happens? This IB allele produce galactase transferase enzyme at the end, and we finally get B antigen and antigen B on the surface. So like this A and B blood group, this O blood group does not produce any enzyme at the end. So that is why we call this as null allele. Okay, so I hope you guys understand. And they cannot add either, like in the B blood group, it added galactose additionally on the surface of the red blood cell. In the A blood group, we got NAG additionally on the surface of the red blood cell. So like A and B blood group, this IO allele cannot produce any terminal enzyme. At the same time, it cannot add either NAG or galactose. So that is why we call that as null allele. So let us learn about the genotypes as well as phenotype of the blood group. So since blood is an internal component, we don't have any specific physical appearance. So we name the phenotype based on the antigen presence on the surface as well as the blood group. So we have 4 common blood groups, which is A, B, O, and AB. So when you talk about genotypes, let us just put a cross and find out what are the possible combinations of genotypes as well as phenotype. So when you talk about A blood group people, their parent, both mother and father, must have these 2 alleles in there. So a father, say for example here, father has IAA allele, mother has IOO allele. So then a child might inherit one allele from the mother, IA, and one allele from the father. So it might even inherit A from the father. So because father we have one, both are same, homozygous. From the mother we have 2 alleles. So we might either get A or O allele. Okay, so if let's just say the person has inherited O allele from the mother and A allele from the father. So here the genotype of this particular A group person is IA and IO. So likewise we have different combination for the blood groups. So let us just cross and find out what are the 6 possible combination that we might inherit. I mean a child might inherit from its parent. So as I told you, in our human population we have 3 alleles that are responsible for the ABO blood groups. We don't know which allele is that parent have, so let us just commonly put here. And also recall that parent, I mean an individual will have either of these two alleles from these three alleles. So in the moon allele no ரெண்டு allele மட்டும்தான் அந்த child or அந்த individual might inherit from the parent. Okay, so don't get confused. So since we have three alleles and I have just put a cross and the resultant product here. So if you look at here, when we cross IA and IA, what we get? A only, because since both are homozygous allele. When you cross A and B, you got the blood type as AB, which means both A and B are expressed. So this clearly says about the codominance or codominisms. So when you cross again A with O allele, what you get is A allele, which means the O allele is recessive. Likewise, when you cross IB with O allele, the resultant blood group is B again. So which means again the O allele is recessive. So this A allele as well as B allele are quite dominant over O allele. Likewise, if a person has to get O blood group, so that is the if parent should have um, uh, uh, both O allele from mother and father, then there is a high possibility to get O blood group. But there are like a slightest chance of in getting O blood group from the parent. So when you look at the genotype ratio, so the four possible blood types that we get is A. So as you look at here, A, and A, and AB, and here, B here, and O. So we have totally four possible blood types among this combination. And the genotypes, when you talk about, these are the six possible genotypes. So since this A and B are dominant, so we have this IA and IA as 2. So let's just count here: IA and IB2, IO 3, and we have here one more IOIA, so we can consider this as 1, so it's totally 3. Likewise, we have 2 AB, so again we are still in the 3, and IB 4, IO 5, and since IO and IB are same, again we'll have to consider that as 1, and finally we have 6 IO. So I hope you guys understood about this ABO blood group and how this alleles does this coding, all these things. If you still have any doubts, you can contact me. Take care, guys.